What's going on, everybody? I hope y'all are having a good evening or morning, depending on what side of the world you're on. And that guy just fell down. That's the poor guy. He was working. To be fair, he wasn't a crackhead. I really need to get those cameras. I keep saying that, and then I keep forgetting. In any case, I hope y'all are doing well. And thanks for joining me. So there's been a lot of speculation about the high-speed rail in California, the proposed routes being over the same routes where the fire was. And a lot of people were like, oh, they set fire to it to develop it, which has not been unheard of. This is something I've actually seen before. It happened in Houston. There's an area in Houston, downtown, or closer to downtown, inside the 610 loop, referred to as Montrose and the Heights. And these used to be like the place to be back in the 50s and 60s. Then they went downhill, you know how it goes. And then they started rebuilding, but there were a lot of ugly, old, abandoned shanty-style homes that, for the most part, were either abandoned or in complete disrepair. And the city was having trouble, what's the word I'm looking for? Condemning them, because they were in a certain zone. I don't remember what the technicality was, but the city couldn't go and have an engineer and an architect go and say, yeah, this is a piece of shit, condemn. And then all of a sudden they started catching fire, and people were saying, well, the homeless people go in there and they smoke crack or whatever, meth, and they're setting the houses on fire because they're stoned and they're dropping the fire. Made sense. And then all of a sudden, this was about 10 years ago, so I'm going to say around 2010, 2011. You can even look back at the Houston newspapers. There was a slew of fires. And I mean, literally every night, another house in those areas was burning. It was a single home, and they never found a dead person, no bodies, nobody got hurt. But the building burned down. And you know what's there now? 10 years, 12 years later? A bunch of 3-story like duplex tile homes, and those those stacked homes that kind of like San Francisco style, that they're kind of thin but they're 3 or 4 levels up. I forgot the style of architecture that is, but those freaking things go for $500,000 to $1 million a piece now, and the crack houses are gone. So it would not be unprecedented, even in my own experience, that contractors may have burned the area to get access to deplete the value of the land. However, that being said, there are a lot of very rich people living. I mean, some of those properties, there's a realtor on the news saying that, I had properties for sale in the Palisades that are gone now. Those houses were 29 to 79 million ranches, or homesteads, or whatever you want to call them, compounds, if you will. I mean, massive, massive homes, right? So people who have that much money, have lawyers, have insurance, and still own the property. So they may want to rebuild. Like, that's not something they're going to give up so easily. So could it be? Definitely. Do I think it is? No, and I'll tell you why. So I decided instead I was going to look at the topographical map of the area where the train was supposed to go, and the topographical map of where the fires were. And they do overlay somewhat and pretty consistently, but it also turns out that all of those places are in the valleys in the mountains. So, you have these mountains and hills all around Los Angeles. The railroad tracks would be following the highways, which makes sense. Typically, you see the railroads following major roads because there's a path, whether it's a valley or they carve something out. So in reality, those areas are the most likely areas to build a railroad or any kind of high-speed rail. Like, it makes sense that that's where they wanted to build it from a topographical and geographic standpoint. Now, my question is, why did the fire start there and not up in the mountains? Well, that's also where you have highways and vehicles. So an idiot drops a cigar out the window, or an arsonist decides to pull over quickly and set something on fire, throws a Molotov out the window, whatever scenario you want to dream up. Those pathways where the highways are and where they want to put the fast rail are also where you have the most human traffic, which would make sense that if there was an arson or some kind of stupidity on the part of a person, that's where they'd likely be anyway. So yeah, so in reality, looking at the map, looking at the topography, and looking at where the fire started, where the highways are, and where they want to build the rail, they all overlap. Where they're building the rail makes sense because that's the pathway between the mountains, where they don't have to dig up a mountain or make a tunnel or anything like that. So I'm not seeing that as a conspiracy. I'm not seeing that as oh, someone set fire to all these houses. Because again, if you're burning someone's $80 million home, chances are the person who afforded the $80 million home has a hell of a good lawyer and is going to sit on the property and either redevelop it or sell it. But those are premium properties because of the view of the ocean, view of the city, etc. So I'm not seeing that. Now, what I do find curious, and this is a whole nother question, is why did the fire start near the roads? Surely, after the first fire happened and started, people would have been smart enough to not be throwing cigarette butts out the car. Like, how many people smoke in their car anymore anyway? Or throwing cigars? So it makes me wonder if that was the most accessible to human beings where the fires started, at least those particular fires, was someone driving around the highways setting fires. And what was the purpose of that? Was it to test our reaction? Was it to cause disruption in the infrastructure? Was it to destroy American property in a deniable way and displace millions or tens of thousands for sure of people to put pressure on the United States? Now that I don't know. Some people are saying it's a DEW, direct energy weapon. Others have said it's actually the smart meters are getting hacked and getting overheated to catch fire, which their smart meters are connected to the internet. Surely that's possible. Somebody can go and screw with them in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if you can set them on fire. I don't handle that kind of equipment. But interesting, because looking into, was this a conspiracy? Did they burn those areas on purpose so they could create the light rail or the speed rail? Led me to a different question. Why did the fires start right off the highways? It makes sense. That's where people are. That's where people make mistakes. But all at the same time, all over the city, they were literally running out of directions to evacuate the city from. You couldn't go to the north in any direction because there was fire around all the major thoroughfares. And you're not going to go through the mountains when the mountains are on fire. When you get a chance, look at where the fires were and then look at where the major highways were. And you're going to see they cut off a lot of highways with the smoke and fire. So in any case, something to think about. I don't think the fires were done to facilitate a speed rail. They could have done that with eminent domain. Because if they try and take the property now, and there used to be an $80 million home there, the property is still a significant value. People aren't going to give it up. And if they can afford an $80 million home, they can probably afford to fight the state in court. So I don't think that's it, but it does beg the question, why did all the fires start by highways? And who was doing what? Like, why did that happen? That's not the natural course of action. And it definitely bothers me that the winds were blowing from east to west out to the Pacific, but the fires were moving from west to east, from the coast where the Palisade fire was, into the mountains. That contradicts the way fire should move. Not a firefighter, but just common sense says that doesn't really jive. In any case, folks, that's it for this one. God bless, Godspeed. Be careful out there. I will see you later.